Security officials in Georgia foiled a recent attempt by Iran's Revolutionary Guard's Quds force to kill an Israeli businessman, Itzik Moshe, who lives in the capital, Tbilisi. A report by Israeli security officials says that under Iranian direction, a Pakistani team affiliated with Al-Qaeda flew to Tbilisi to gather intelligence and prepare for the attack. The plot was foiled by Georgian security forces, who noticed that one of the Pakistani operatives was behaving suspiciously. They found weapons in his possession. The Revolutionary Guards have been involved in various attempts of targeting Israelis abroad. The most recent attempt came last summer in Turkey, an attempt foiled at the time in a joint operation by Israeli and Turkish security forces. I-24 News Middle East correspondent Alec Pollard brings more details.
Intelligence and security forces in Georgia have uncovered a plot to assassinate an Israeli citizen there, Itzik Moshe, a man who was involved in promoting ties between Georgia and Israel. This assassination plot being directed by Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps and its Quds force, with many different elements involved. First of all, we have an assassin who was arrested a week ago by the Georgian security forces after suspicious activity. He was caught with a weapon and other incriminating evidence on him. There were also two dual citizens of Georgian Iranian citizenship who were involved in smuggling weapons from Turkey into Georgia, and apparently also a team from Pakistan affiliated with Al-Qaeda who were involved in gathering intelligence for this operation. So a wide net of operatives here, many of whom cannot be traced back directly to Iran. Iran operating people that allows them to keep an arm's length from involvement in this potential or attempted assassination that was thwarted. It should be noted also that according to an Israeli security source, the cell operating in Georgia was since 2011 operated by Mohammad Reza Ebadi Arablu, an Iranian citizen there, and also one of the people who had been involved in the past in attempts to maybe target Israeli civilians in Georgia is none other than Shahram Poursafi, who was also incriminated as being involved in the attempt to assassinate former National Security Advisor of the United States, John Bolton, and is currently being tried for that in the United States. So we're talking about hardcore Iranian elements of the Revolutionary Guards, of the Quds Force, and others who had been involved in potential assassinations in the past, trying to assassinate an Israeli citizen in Tbilisi, but the Georgian security forces were the ones who thwarted that. Of course, the Israeli intelligence and security have been updated about that situation. It should be noted, though, that despite this, Israel has not increased the travel warning for Israelis in Georgia. Georgia, a very popular destination for Israeli tourists, and we'll continue to update with this story when more information comes in on what has been happening there and what led up to the arrests that were conducted.
And joining us to further talk on this story is Amir Oren, defense and government commentator. Amir, thank you very much for being with us. This is unfortunately not the first time and probably not the last time in which Iranian affiliated forces try to hit Israelis abroad. They know that hitting Israel in response to all those alleged strikes in Syria or in other places against Iranian targets, doing it within Israel is difficult. Doing it abroad is a different story.
Yes, that's right, and it's a fascinating story, but one suspects that this is only part of the story, the tip of the iceberg, because in other cases, there are precedents, of course. It was Israeli intelligence, Mossad and military intelligence who tipped off the local law enforcement and security services authorities. And while the Georgian services are obviously competent in surveying their own country, it helps when Israel, with its intelligence penetration of the Revolutionary Guards and especially Quds Force, could uncover some of these plots. And yes, the Iranians tried to get some deniability by hiring other foreigners. It is true that Iran has been fighting ISIS. ISIS is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, but in this shady business, there are always very strange alliances.
There were, just if I remember, some attempts from the past. Foiled attempts in Thailand, in India, in Turkey, which we mentioned, but also successful attempts either by Iran or Hezbollah, Bulgaria, for example, Argentina, Turkey, and others. Is there much more that Israel can do other than telling its citizens traveling abroad, diplomats or tourists or others, beware, because things can always happen even in friendly nations such as Georgia, for example?
The Iranian modus operandi, even under the Shah, when the Shah wanted to kill his former Savak chief, Bakhtiar, abroad, he did it in Iraq. And when the Ayatollahs came to power, they killed the former Prime Minister Shapur Bakhtiar not far from Paris. So this is run of the mill for the Iranians. But you know, Jonathan, the most dangerous place for Israelis is not Georgia. In Ariel today, 3 Israelis were murdered. It's much more dangerous for an Israeli to be in a settlement in the West Bank.
And again, we should expect more attempts by Iran to try and hit Israelis abroad, because for Iran doing it in Israel proper is somewhat difficult?
Yes, this is the shadow war. Israel hits Iranians everywhere. Iran tries to hit Israeli targets, could be maritime targets, embassies, not only Israelis, Jews all over the world, and it's impossible to protect everybody all the time.
Amir Oren, defense and government analyst, thank you very much for being with us.
Jonathan.